The night my wife asked for a divorce, I didn't beg, I didn't cry. I smiled. By the time she realized why, it was already too late. Hey folks, thanks for stopping by today. I've got a story that's still fresh in my mind, and honestly, it's one I never thought I'd have to tell. But here we are. My wife, Emily, cheated on me once. And let me tell you, once was plenty. I think she believed she could manage it quietly, keep all the moving parts hidden, and that I'd just keep going along like nothing had changed. What she didn't count on was how I would respond once I figured things out. The whole mess unfolded in a way that, sadly, probably sounds familiar to some of you. Emily and I had been married for 15 years. Somewhere along the way we slipped into autopilot. The spark that used to keep us close had burned down to a faint ember, and before we knew it, we were just two people sharing the same address but living separate lives. She'd retreat into her own space, I'd retreat into mine. We didn't laugh like we used to, didn't touch like we used to, and the kind of late-night talks that once bonded us were gone. I started noticing little signs, things you can't unsee once they register. It wasn't one big smoking gun, but enough breadcrumbs that I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did a little digging, and sure enough, my gut was right. At the very least, she'd given a piece of her heart to another man. Emily began voicing her frustrations more often. For years, I tuned her out whenever she started in on what was wrong, but this time I really heard her. She wasn't just irritated, she was done. She told me she'd fallen out of love with me. And I knew that if I tried to beg her to stay, to plead for another chance, she'd only push me further away. The last time she looked at me, I could see it, the final thread between us snapping. I sat there with a beer in my hand, muttering under my breath, running our last argument on repeat in my head. I kept wondering what magic words could pull her back, make her see me the way she once did. But the harder I tried, the more she seemed to slip right through my fingers. Most nights, I'd sit alone at the kitchen table while she slept in our big bed upstairs. I'd nurse my wounded pride in silence, staring into the dark until one thought hit me square in the chest. Why was I trying to fight her feelings? Why was I acting like I could prove her wrong about her own heart? She'd been speaking her truth to me for a long time, I just didn't want to accept it. And whether I liked her truth or not, it was hers. That's when I started thinking about my own truth. And to my surprise, I realized I wasn't happy either. I didn't even know if I loved her anymore. I was clinging to the idea of our marriage, the memory of what we used to be, not the reality staring me in the face. That moment shook me. It took a while to make sense of it all, but once I did, a plan started forming in my head. I didn't know if it would work, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I'd reached the point where I simply didn't care anymore. Whatever we'd been doing all these years clearly wasn't working, and continuing down the same road expecting a different outcome felt like the textbook definition of madness. I gave a little smirk to myself, gathered up the empty beer bottles from the night before, and tossed them into the trash. Then I walked right past our bedroom and into the guest room, making it my place for the night. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was the first small move in a bigger plan forming in my mind. The next morning, Emily swung the door open without warning, flooding the room with light. "Why are you sleeping in here?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious. I shielded my eyes and muttered, "Stayed up late. Didn't want to bother you." She studied me for a moment, almost like she was trying to figure out if there was more to the story, then turned and headed for the kitchen to start her usual coffee routine. I've never been a coffee drinker myself. I've always had that rare gift of waking up clear-headed and ready to go without it. And today, more than ever, I felt alive. My step felt lighter. There was an odd sense of freedom in the air, and it was mine. A little while later, she sat across from me in the living room. Her fists were clenched, her jaw set, the kind of posture someone takes when they've worked up the nerve for something big. "Mark," she began, hesitating. This isn't working. I feel lost. I don't think I love you anymore." I looked at her, completely calm, not the slightest bit rattled. She hesitated again, like she wasn't sure if she should keep going. "I think we need a divorce," she finally said, the word heavy enough to hang between us. I smiled. She frowned, clearly thrown off. "That sounds fine," I replied. She blinked, confused. "Mark, did you even hear what I just said?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I heard you. You don't love me and you want a divorce." "I'm saying I agree." Her brow furrowed, her eyes darting over my face like she was looking for cracks in the armor. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "Emily, I can't change how you feel. I won't even try. If you don't love me, there's nothing I can say to make that untrue." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could tell she'd practiced this speech in her head 100 times, expecting tears, anger, a desperate plea for her to stay. Instead, my composure had knocked her off balance. "Wait, you're saying you don't love me either?" she asked, her voice smaller now. "There were times," I said with a shrug. "Just like there were times for you." Her expression shifted, and for the first time I think she realized she wasn't holding all the cards here. "Well," I said, standing and stretching, "if that's all, I'll be heading out." "Wait, what? Where are you going?" "I think I'll stop by a few bars," I said, sliding into my jacket. "Might even start meeting some new people." I gave her a small wave and walked out, leaving her sitting there on the couch, mouth slightly open, unsure what had just happened. The air outside felt different, crisp, electric. And when I walked into that bar later, I carried that same strange sense of liberation with me. I ordered myself a bourbon and found a quiet table in the corner, away from the noise. Before I even realized what I was doing, my phone was already in my hand. Without much thought, I scrolled to Jessica's name, a coworker with a well-earned reputation for loving a bit of workplace gossip. I slipped into the role of the heartbroken husband, lowering my voice and pouring every ounce of disappointment into the story. I made sure to highlight how completely blindsided I was by Emily's request for a divorce. Of course, I knew exactly what I was doing. Jessica had always been a little flirty around me at the office, and she was single and interested. "Oh, Mark," she purred, her voice soft and warm, "you shouldn't be alone tonight." That was all the encouragement I needed. She offered to meet up just as a friend, though we both knew it was more than that. I suggested we meet at a bar I knew Emily and her friends liked to visit. Was I concerned she might see me there? Not in the slightest. As far as I was concerned, my marriage was already finished. Emily didn't love me anymore, and in that moment I realized I didn't love her either. Jessica showed up quickly, dressed to turn heads. The moment she spotted me, her confident smile flickered just a little. My demeanor didn't match the image of a devastated man she'd been expecting. "Mark," she said, sliding into the seat beside me, "are you okay?" I held up my left hand, showing her the bare skin where my ring had been. "She wants a divorce. Why should I fight it?" I signaled for another bourbon. She ordered her usual Cosmo. "Over the phone you sounded more upset," she said carefully. I shrugged. "Jess, we've been unhappy for a long time. Maybe I haven't loved her the way I used to in years. If she wants out, I'm not going to chain myself to something that's already dead. I'm tired of feeling like I'm on the sidelines of my own marriage." She took a slow sip of her drink, studying me over the rim of her glass. I could see the thoughts forming in her mind before she spoke. "Maybe we should dance," she said at last. I didn't hesitate. I reached for her hand and led her to the dance floor. She leaned into me, her body warm against mine. "If this is just to get back at her," Jessica whispered, looking up at me. I raised an eyebrow. "Maybe." She pressed even closer. "I'm okay with that." We stayed out there for hours. No glances at my phone, no worrying about Emily, no heavy thoughts. Just music, movement, and the feeling of someone wanting to be close. Jessica was fun, self-assured, and if I'm being honest, more physically striking than Emily had been in years. By the time we made it to the parking lot, the tension between us broke and we kissed. I opened the passenger door for Jessica and gave her a grin. "See you at work tomorrow," I said. She nodded, but there was a glint in her eyes. We both knew exactly what would happen next. By tomorrow morning, half the office would know. By lunchtime, everyone would. And honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd slipped the chains that had been holding me down. The truth was, part of me was already looking forward to watching Emily's reaction when word eventually reached her. The moment I stepped into the house, Emily's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Where have you been?" She wasn't upstairs in bed. She'd been sitting in the living room, waiting for the sound of the front door, ready to pounce the second I came in. I hung my coat neatly in the closet, kicked off my shoes, and began changing into something comfortable for bed. "I went out," I said casually. "Told you I was leaving earlier. Why's it matter to you?" "Mark," she started, her tone softer now, "I was worried you might do something." She paused, picking her words carefully. "Something bad. To yourself." I gave her a small smile, not mocking, just calm. "Emily, I know where you stand. I'm at peace with it. You want a divorce? Fine. I'll give you one. I'd never keep you tied to someone you don't love anymore." I picked up my pillow and a change of clothes for the next morning, then turned toward the guest room. "Mark," she called after me, hesitation in her voice. I stopped, shifting my things to the other arm. "What?" She glanced at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't understand. You don't have to sleep in another bed. Unless," she hesitated again. Unless you're saying you're moving out of our bedroom? I wasn't about to make it easy for her. What? Were you planning to move out instead? Her breath caught. She wiped at her eyes, a tear slipping free. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant you can stay if you want to. But if you don't, I guess I could take another room. Her voice wavered. She was nervous, almost unsettled. I realized she had never truly imagined what it would feel like to sleep alone, to face the quiet without me in the next pillow over. I spared her the torture. This bed's more comfortable anyway, I said, nodding toward the guest room. I'll stay here with you, I said, if it's not too much trouble. Her face lit up instantly. Oh yes, that would be wonderful. I mean, it's no problem for me. Then it's settled, I replied, tossing my pillow back onto our bed. She looked like she wanted to talk, but I was worn out. I told her we'd get into it later. The next day things shifted again. By lunch, I'd already had 3 different women at work make it known they were interested. One of my buddies even passed me his sister's number, a widow who'd been struggling to meet someone. By the end of the day, I had a string of dates lined up for the coming week, including another with Jessica. But I deliberately kept that night free. I needed to sit down with Emily and have the conversation we'd been skirting around, the one where we admitted that her life and mine needed to go in different directions. When I got home, she was waiting for me, again. Carol saw you last night at the bar, she said the second I stepped inside. She said you were with a woman. Who was she? What were you doing together? Carol said you two looked very comfortable. I could have unloaded on her right there. I could have pointed out the irony, the hypocrisy, of her questioning me after everything she'd done. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled and said, I'll answer your questions after I change. She tried to keep pressing, but I ignored her and went to the bedroom. When I came back, she was standing there with her arms crossed, eyes locked on me, a mix of anger and unshed tears. It was Jessica from work, I told her plainly. I didn't bother denying it. I could see she was bracing for me to spin some story, but I wasn't about to. What were you doing together? She demanded. We were on a date. A date? She all but shouted. I nodded, calm as ever, and sat down. You have no right, she cried. We are married. What makes you think you can do that? I stood, went into the kitchen for a drink, and returned to my seat. She was still standing, her whole body tight with emotion, waiting for me to justify myself. Why? I asked, looking her in the eye. Should it bother you? I looked right at her when I asked, why should it bother you? She stared back, her mouth slightly open. We're married, she finally said, like that was supposed to explain everything. But you want a divorce, don't you? She hesitated, then nodded, her voice barely there. And you've told me you don't love me, right? I said I'm not in love with you, she corrected. Same thing, I said evenly. And I agree with you, Emily. You're not in love with me anymore. So why shouldn't I go find love somewhere else? You don't want this marriage, you don't love me, so what possible reason do I have to stay here feeling trapped with you? She sank into a chair, shoulders caving inward. What will people say? Don't you realize how this looks? Carol is probably running her mouth all over town about my husband dating some woman. Don't you dare call Jessica I cut in sharply. She was a perfect lady and I treated her with respect. She went on a date with a married man. I call that promiscuous. Oh really? I said, standing now, pacing in front of her. She's single. If that makes her promiscuous, then what does that make a married woman who spends her time entertaining other men behind her husband's back? Emily froze, the words hitting harder than she wanted to admit. I could see it in her eyes, panic. How much does he know? What does that have to do with me? She finally snapped, her voice rising. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Long enough for her to read it in my face. Her body trembled. How much do you know? Enough, I said, my voice breaking into a shout. Whether you slept with them or not, I don't even care anymore. This marriage ended the moment you decided I didn't count. I'm not going to waste another tear over it. I'm moving forward. I need to look out for myself since my wife clearly won't. I walked into the kitchen. Dinner wasn't ready, so I started cooking something simple for myself. A little later she came in, standing quietly while I finished my plate. I'm very sorry, she said softly. I set my dishes in the sink, wiped my hands and turned to face her. I'm sorry too. I've got plans for the rest of the week. Don't expect me home early. If it's easier for you, I can stay in the guest room. She didn't respond. I headed upstairs that night, the silence between us heavier than anything we'd said. I stuck with the guest room that night. I'm sure Emily didn't sleep much, probably turning over every conversation we'd had in her head. The next day, I went out with Christina, a divorced mom of two I'd met recently. We spent the afternoon playing laser tag, laughing like a couple of kids, then ended the night with a kiss under the dim neon glow outside the arcade. It felt good, better than I expected, to be wanted again. When I got home, Emily was waiting in the living room. "You seem like you had a good time," she said, her voice carefully even. "I did," I replied, smiling. "Thanks for noticing. How was your evening?" For the first time in months, we actually sat down and talked. She admitted that she had never actually gone all the way with anyone else, but she had kissed other men and confided deeply in Justin from work. "I wasn't ready to cheat," she said quietly, almost like she was trying to convince herself. "Even if you didn't," I told her, "you still betrayed me, Emily. We were supposed to be a team. But I'll give you credit for not crossing that last line." She hesitated before saying, "Mark, I don't know if I want a divorce anymore." I gave her a small smile. "Let me know when you figure it out." Later that night, she followed me into the guest room as I was getting ready for bed. "Mark," she whispered as I pulled my shirt off, "come back to bed." I paused. "Do you think that's wise?" Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know. I just want you right now." I reached out and she threw herself into my arms, sobbing. She was confused, I could feel it in the way she clung to me. But I held her until we both drifted off. For the moment, that was enough. The next day, I came home earlier than usual, repeating the mantra I'd been telling myself lately: take it one day at a time. I opened the door to find Emily sitting with Carol, one of her friends. "Mark," Emily said, surprised. "I didn't expect you back so soon." "Linda." "Carol," I nodded politely. Carol gave me a look that could have cut through steel but kept her mouth shut. "Work finished early," I explained. "So here I am. Do you two need some privacy?" Emily and Carol exchanged a quick glance before Carol slowly rose from the couch. "I should be going," Carol said, standing. "Linda, I'll talk to you soon." Emily walked her to the door. Carol threw me one last sharp, disapproving look but didn't say a word as she left. "Sorry for intruding," I said once the door shut. "Didn't mean to interrupt your evening." "Don't be silly, Mark. This is your home too." Home. The word hung in my mind. When was the last time either of us had actually called this place that? "Have you eaten?" she asked. "There are some leftovers," she added, pointing toward the counter. "Carol and I made enough for two." I sat down and picked at the food while she moved around the kitchen, tidying up. "How are you?" I asked after a moment. She exhaled slowly and sat across from me. Okay, I think." I invited Carol over to talk, but honestly, she just confused me more. "How so?" "She told me I should kick you out, change the locks, and just divorce your ass." I gave a half smile. "Well, my key still works, so I guess you didn't have time to call the locksmith." She laughed softly. "Don't be ridiculous. I told her that I'm the one who asked for the divorce, and after saying that to you, what rights do I even have over you? I left you, right?" She looked straight into my eyes, her voice holding a question she didn't dare speak outright. She wanted reassurance, badly. Part of me wanted to get up, wrap my arms around her, and tell her I still belonged to her. But I didn't. In the past, that kind of assurance would have only pushed her further away. Maybe this new, quiet distance would have a different effect. So instead, I shifted the subject. "I'm afraid I've got some bad news. My date for tomorrow night had to cancel. I'm stuck with 2 concert tickets. Thought maybe you'd like to go, instead of another girl." Her face lit up immediately. "Oh, Mark, I'd love to. I mean, if you really want me to." I shrugged casually. "Well, I could just give the tickets to someone at work." "No," she said quickly, almost sharply. "I mean, I'd be happy to go," she said. "Happy to go with me?" I asked, watching her closely. She blushed and gave a small nod. "Yes," she whispered. I smiled. This could be fun. When I picked her up after work, Emily was already dressed and waiting. She looked good, the kind of good that isn't accidental. Dressed to impress. I couldn't help but wonder if she was aiming that effort at me. I didn't know much about the band. It had been her idea, actually, but I'd bought the tickets anyway. They were good. Loud but good. I wasn't surprised when we ran into Heather. Emily, on the other hand, looked genuinely taken aback, especially when she realized how put together Heather looked. It didn't take her long to figure out that Heather would have been the one on my arm tonight if plans hadn't changed. I gave Heather an apologetic smile. "Hey Heather, this is Emily." Emily Heather. Heather was supposed to be my date tonight, but something came up. Normally, when I introduced Emily, I would say, "my wife." Tonight I chose not to. And Emily noticed instantly. Heather, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Mrs. Donaldson, she said, locking eyes with her. Something unspoken passed between the two of them, a quiet exchange of territory. Heather was quick on the uptake. She gave a polite apology and said she'd see me at work the next day. The moment she walked away, Emily latched onto my hand. Mark, where is your wedding ring? I shrugged. At home. Took it off after you asked for a divorce. Don't need it anymore. She didn't answer right away, just stared at me, her mouth opening slightly before closing again. Honestly, it was satisfying to see her at a loss for words. Mark, we aren't divorced yet, she finally said. I smiled faintly and turned my attention back to the music. Several times that night, I went to the bar to refill our glasses. Each time, Emily's eyes followed me like a hawk. And each time, without fail, a woman would strike up a conversation. One even slipped me her number. Emily saw every bit of it, but she didn't say a word. For the first time in a very long while, she saw me in action. I think it caught her off guard, seeing me like that again. That same charm, that easy wit, the light flirting, it was the very thing that had once pulled her in all those years ago. And tonight I think she remembered. She didn't say a word the entire ride home. I didn't either. Once we got back, we each started getting ready for bed. Mark, where's your wedding ring? She asked suddenly. I nodded toward the dresser. Sock drawer. She walked over, opened it, and pulled out the gold band. She turned it over in her hand, then looked back at me. I could see it hit her, the weight of what it meant. Her eyes filled with tears. It's yours now, I told her quietly. I think you should throw it away. Or sell it. She hesitated. What should I do with it? Whatever you want, I said. That ring had once meant everything, our love, our promises, our marriage. But now, it was just a memory in metal form. At some point after that, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I came downstairs to find breakfast waiting, eggs and bacon. Emily was an incredible cook, and I made sure to tell her I appreciated the effort. But I noticed something. She still had her wedding and engagement rings on. She kept fidgeting with them as she ate, as if they suddenly meant more to her now than they had in months. That morning at work, my phone rang. Carol? I said, surprised. Didn't expect to hear from you. What can I do for you? Lunch. Today. 12:30 Bohemia. And she hung up. I didn't know Carol well. She was one of Emily's friends, and from what I'd seen, partly fueled by loyalty and partly by anger. I also knew that whatever I said or did at that lunch would be carried straight back to Emily. When I arrived, I took a deep breath and decided to go straight at it. Carol, how much do you really know about what's going on with Emily and me? I know her husband's acting like a complete idiot, she snapped. Are you married, Carol? She shook her head. Ever been married? Another shake. Do you have a degree in counseling? I kept my voice calm, but there was an edge of firmness to it. Carol, answer me honestly, do you have any professional qualifications to advise someone about their marriage? She blinked, caught off guard. What? You heard me. Do you have any training? A counseling license? Anything? I let the question sit for a moment before continuing. You talk about helping her, guiding her, but all you know is her side of the story. Her eyes began to glisten, and I could tell my words had landed. I didn't push further, I'd said what needed to be said. Carol, I went on, softening my tone, Linda looked me in the eye and told me she wanted a divorce. She said, I don't love you anymore. Now tell me, how am I supposed to respond to that? What argument could I possibly make to prove her wrong? Carol stayed quiet. That night, my date was someone different, beautiful, confident, and magnetic. Our dynamic at work had always been professional, but there had been a moment months ago when that started to shift. I'd been telling a joke in the office, and she'd walked in right as I delivered the punchline. I turned, saw her stunned face and grinned. Admit it, that was funny, I'd said. She'd hesitated, then burst out laughing. From that day on, she was one of the guys in our office banter. But tonight? Tonight she was all woman. The chemistry was instant, electric. She let things go further than any of my other dates had so far, and at the very last second I was the one who pulled back. When I got home, Emily wouldn't look at me. You smell like her, she said quietly. Realization hit me, followed by a wave of guilt. I'm sorry, I said, standing. I didn't realize. I want you in our bed, she whispered, but I can't handle this. I can pretend you're out with the guys. I can ignore what people say. But I can't ignore the scent of another woman on you. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. I was inconsiderate. I'll shower and come back. The next morning was Saturday. I'd barely opened my eyes when Emily woke me, breakfast in hand. "What's the occasion?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. I took a breath. "Emily, I need to be honest with you. I need you to understand something." Her expression shifted, cautious. "I may still see other women," I said carefully. She swallowed hard. For a long moment we just looked at each other. Finally she gave a small nod. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised." I tilted my head slightly. "You okay with that?" "I love you," she whispered. I reached up, cupped her face in my hands. "Then show me." Her lips met mine eagerly, and suddenly the urgency between us was unlike anything we'd shared in years. That night, we rediscovered each other, not just physically but emotionally, as if we were trying to make up for every lost moment. Looking back, I think she expected me to break, but the more she saw me moving on, the more she realized what she was losing. It's true, what you don't have, you want most. What you already have, you take for granted. I live by those words now. So, am I still seeing other women? I haven't had to. Because now, Emily and I truly listen to each other. We hear each other. And as long as we keep doing that, there's no need for anything, or anyone, else.